Hi, I'm Kimberly. Welcome back to the Success Series Talks. Talks designed to help you get what you want out of life. Remember to listen, take notes, and most importantly, act. What if I were to take you to a spot in the forest where I had a bear tranquilized and told you that I wanted you to try to kill that bear with nothing more than the metal file connected to a small pair of fingernail clippers? Do you think you could possibly kill the bear with that? Would you even try, or would you say, nah, it can't be done? Bear skin and fur are several inches thick. Now, let's say that I took that same bear and those same nail clippers and locked you in a cage with him, knowing that in 2 hours or less, that bear would wake up and tear you to pieces. Do you think you could kill that bear now? This was the exact situation one man I know found himself in. He worked for the Game and Fish in Wyoming. And when he got to work that day, he had an assignment where he needed to go tag a bear they really wanted to track. Normally they would go with a partner, but his partner called in and said he was running late. So this man just decided to go take care of himself because it was kind of a small project, it wasn't really that big of a deal, and he figured he could handle it himself. So he got there, and the bear was in the cage. So he got out of his truck and he tranquilized the bear. He waited for him to fall asleep and then hopped in the cage to tag him. Something went wrong that day, though, and the latch didn't stay up, and suddenly he heard a loud thud behind him. And when he turned around, to his horror, the door was down and locked in position. He realized his gun was in the truck. In desperation, he began to search through all of his pockets, hoping to find anything at all that he could use as a weapon. And all he had was a small nail clipper with a file attached to it that had a little hook on the end. Do you know the ones I'm talking about? So he realized that the odds of him killing that bear with all that thick skin wasn't likely. However, he didn't like the alternative. So he went to work. He worked through the hide around its neck and all that muscle until he got to the jugular vein. And then he cut it and the bear bled out. A couple of hours later, the guys were sitting around in the office and started to realize that this man had been gone a little longer than he should have been. So I took a drive out to where the trap for the bear had been set. And there he was, sitting in a cage with a lot of blood around him. This man didn't make excuses for why he was unlikely to succeed. Failing wasn't even an option for him. This is the very reason why some people do fail. Failure is always an option in their minds. They keep that door wide open. Some people sit around and think about failing more often than they think about succeeding. To save their ego, they will even say, well, I didn't really think that I was likely to accomplish this, or I was just trying it out. I didn't really care that much about it. We actually cause our own failure because if we are never all in, then we will never give it all we got. And if we never give it all we got, then it is very unlikely that we will ever succeed. Sometimes even if we really want something, because we leave other options out there in case we fail, then success still eludes us. If the mind has too many options, then it won't stay focused. Many of us are constantly thinking of lots of options in case something doesn't work out. Y'all know who you are. While there is nothing wrong with having a plan B, just in case, it really is not a good idea to have a plan B through Z. We are unlikely to succeed if we have all those other options to go through, quote unquote, just in case. Do you ever find yourself fitting this mold? If you do, then bust through those fears, insecurities, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, and whatever else is holding you back, and give it everything you've got. And if it is your ego, and you're worried about people thinking that it was important to you and that you gave it all you got, and then you failed, so it's an even bigger blow than it would have otherwise been, then stop caring. So what if people know that it was your dream and it didn't work out the first time you tried it? Just because it doesn't go smoothly at first doesn't mean you failed permanently. It just means that you need to try again. Thomas Edison really wanted to invent the light bulb, and he put his whole heart into it. He didn't stop after the first time or even the 100th time and say, well, I didn't really want to do this. I didn't really try that hard. I was just curious to see if I could think of something, but it is okay that it didn't work out. It isn't that big of a deal. Can you really imagine him saying that? No. So be like Edison. Put everything you've got into it. There's a story about Caesar. during a pivotal moment in a war. And he and his men had just arrived by ships on the beaches. He had all of his men get out of their ships, and then he burned those ships. He did this so that his men would give it all they had. He didn't want them to have the option of retreating. He didn't want failure to be an option. Kind of like the guy with the bear. If you don't have an option to fail, then you are less likely to. Under these circumstances, failure meant death. He knew his men would give it their best. There would be no excuses. You see, a lot of people go into something really excited in the beginning. We're pumped up, we believe we can do it, and we just charge in there with no fear. Then a little setback happens here. Someone gives us a bad comment here about it and tells us it isn't possible. Small oversight there. Another setback, and pretty soon, they aren't excited. They are ready to retreat back to safety, back to their comfort zone. They decide the pain and hard work aren't worth it anymore. If you have the option to go back to where you were before, there will be a strong temptation to do so. And this may be what is keeping you from your dreams. Burn the ships. Now, you may not be able to physically do that, but you can do it mentally. I've read several of Robert Kiyosaki's books. He is one of my heroes for a few very important reasons. But one of these reasons is kind of interesting. Robert talks about his two dads, his real dad, who was quite poor, and his friend's dad that he sort of adopted as his dad and took advice from and learned a lot of things from, who was quite rich. He learned from his rich dad that owning businesses and having a passive income was the way that he wanted to go in order to get what he wanted out of life. So this became a driving force for him. At one point, while he and his wife were trying to launch a business, they were struggling a bit and even ended up living in their car. However, through it all, going back to a job wasn't an option. In his mind, he burned the ship. He refused to retreat back. Like Caesar's men, he would either win the battle or die trying, but he wasn't retreating. His family and friends told him what they thought of what he was doing, and it wasn't very supportive. However, he was undaunted. Today, he has built a massive empire and helps millions upon millions of people through his books, seminars, and programs. This is why he's my hero. It didn't matter what came to him. He didn't go back. He didn't leave that door open at all. It didn't matter what his family and friends thought of him. It didn't matter to him. All that mattered was getting the success he desired and having the life he wanted. There wasn't anything super about him. He wasn't super talented or super smart. He was an average person. He didn't have the advantage of coming from a really rich family or having someone to help fund all of his many ideas. He had to figure out how to do all of this, mostly on his own. What was above average about him was his ability to persist and to stay focused. The thing is, this is something anyone can develop. I bet if you asked him if it were easy, he would tell you no. However, if you asked him if it were worth it, he would say yes. The man who conquered the bear said that what led to his success under that stressful situation was two things: desperation and desire. He said that these can be very motivating factors in our lives. He had a desire to live, and the situation itself created the desperation. A situation doesn't have to be physically dangerous in order for us to become desperate. It can be a mental, financial, or emotionally desperate situation. I know some people who've allowed licenses for their jobs to expire in an attempt to make it so that they no longer had any choice but to go forward with their idea or plan because they knew that it would be just as difficult to go back. So if they got rid of the ability to go back, then in their minds they would just keep going forward. If you have dreams that you really care about, figure out a way to create that desire. Well, hopefully that desire is already there. Otherwise, it's not going to do you much good. But figure out a way to create that desperation to help you get that desire. Sometimes people live their lives cautiously trying to avoid having anything negative happen. This is a good way to have a lot of negative things happen. Because the problem is that in the end, some of those very things happen anyway. I heard a story of a guy who wanted to avoid getting hurt in a football game because he had a date to a dance afterward. While trying to be careful, he still ended up with a fat lip. But to make matters worse, because so many weren't trying their best, they also lost the game. What is the point of life if it isn't to be lived? Are you living the life you want? Why not? What is holding you back? Figure out what you really want, and then figure out how to create a situation where you have no way of going back, so that it propels you forward to persist until you succeed. Success rarely goes to someone just because they are talented, smart, or have lots of money. As a matter of fact, I can tell you story after story of people who have been talented and smart and yet have never made it to that successful moment they wanted. They're barely eking out a living, and they're not even happy with where their life is. Okay, success generally goes to the one who is persistent. The longest. Decide to be persistent today, and you'll be successful tomorrow. Thanks for listening, and make it a great day.